In the freezing mountains of Afghanistan, seasoned soldiers watched through their scopes as a figure moved silently into position. The target was impossible, 3,000 meters away, beyond what most considered the limit of human capability. Wind speeds were unpredictable, visibility was poor, and the shot would require mathematical precision that seemed almost supernatural. "She'll never make it," whispered one veteran marksman, shaking his head. "That's not a shot for anyone, especially not." But Sergeant Elena Rodriguez had spent her entire life proving people wrong. Born in a small Texas town where girls weren't supposed to dream of military glory, she had fought every step of the way to earn her place among the world's most elite snipers. Now, with enemy forces threatening to overrun an Allied position, everything came down to this single moment. The scope's crosshairs wavered slightly in the mountain wind. Her finger rested on the trigger. 3,000 meters, a distance that would either make her legendary or end everything she had worked for. What happened next would change military history forever and prove that sometimes the most unlikely person can achieve the impossible when everything depends on one perfect shot. Elena Rodriguez grew up in the dusty streets of Brownsville, Texas, where the summer heat could melt asphalt and dreams seemed just as fragile. Her father, Miguel, worked double shifts at the local auto repair shop, his calloused hands telling the story of a man who had sacrificed everything for his family. Her mother, Carmen, cleaned houses for wealthy families across town, coming home each evening with stories of lives so different from their own that they might as well have been fairy tales. The Rodriguez family lived in a small two-bedroom house where the air conditioning barely worked and the roof leaked when it rained. Elena shared a room with her younger brother, Carlos, who dreamed of becoming a professional soccer player despite having never owned a proper pair of cleats. Their neighborhood wasn't the kind of place where people talked about military careers or sniper training. It was a place where survival was the main goal, and anything beyond that felt like luxury. But Elena was different from the moment she could walk. While other children played with dolls or video games, she was fascinated by precision and focus. She would spend hours throwing rocks at tin cans lined up on the back fence, never satisfied until she could hit each one consistently. Her father noticed this obsession first, watching from the kitchen window as his 8-year-old daughter practiced the same motion over and over again. "Mija has good eyes," he told Carmen one evening as they watched Elena set up increasingly difficult targets for herself. "Better than mine ever were." Carmen worried about her daughter's intense focus. "She's too serious for a child," she would say, watching Elena practice while other kids played in the street. "She should be laughing more, playing with friends." But Elena found joy in the challenge. Every successful hit brought a smile to her face that seemed to light up the entire backyard. She wasn't trying to be different or rebellious. She was simply drawn to activities that required absolute concentration and steady hands. When Elena turned 10, her uncle Roberto visited from San Antonio. Roberto had served in the army during the Gulf War and brought stories that captivated the young girl. He talked about discipline, honor, and the importance of protecting others. But what really caught Elena's attention were his stories about military sharpshooters. The best snipers aren't necessarily the strongest or the fastest, Roberto explained one evening as the family gathered around the small kitchen table. They're the ones who can stay calm under pressure, who can make their breathing steady when everything around them is chaos. Elena hung on every word. She had never heard of anything that sounded so perfectly suited to her personality and skills. That night, she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, imagining herself in uniform, using her natural abilities to make a difference in the world. The next day, she asked her father if she could try shooting his old hunting rifle. Miguel had inherited the weapon from his own father, but rarely used it anymore. The rifle was heavy for a 10-year-old, but Elena insisted on learning proper form and safety. Under her father's careful supervision, she fired her first real shot at a target Roberto had drawn on cardboard. The bullet hit just left of center. Not perfect, but remarkably close for a first attempt. Roberto whistled in appreciation. "Natural talent," he said, nodding approvingly. But talent without training is just potential. From that day forward, Elena begged for shooting lessons. Her parents couldn't afford professional instruction, but Roberto agreed to teach her during his visits. He showed her how to control her breathing, how to account for wind, how to squeeze the trigger smoothly rather than jerking it. Most importantly, he taught her that shooting was about mental discipline as much as physical skill. Anyone can pull a trigger, he would say during their practice sessions. But a real marksman thinks 3 steps ahead. You don't just aim at where the target is now. You aim at where it will be when your bullet arrives. Elena absorbed these lessons with an intensity that amazed her family. She would practice breathing exercises in her bedroom, holding her breath for longer and longer periods while keeping her hands steady. She studied ballistics books that Roberto brought from the library, learning about trajectory and wind resistance even though the math was sometimes beyond her grade level. At school, Elena's teachers noticed her exceptional focus and concentration. She excelled in mathematics and science, subjects that required logical thinking and precision. However, she struggled to relate to her female classmates, who seemed more interested in fashion and social drama than the military history books Elena preferred to read during lunch breaks. Elena's a good student, her 5th grade teacher, Mrs. Patterson, told Carmen during a parent conference. But she seems isolated sometimes. She might benefit from joining some group activities, maybe making more friends. Carmen shared these concerns with Miguel, but Elena overheard the conversation. I don't need more friends, she insisted. I have goals. I'm going to join the military and become the best sniper they've ever seen. Her parents exchanged glances. It wasn't that they didn't support their daughter's dreams, but the idea of Elena in combat seemed impossibly distant from their daily reality. Military service wasn't common in their neighborhood, and they had never known a female sniper. Maybe you could be a teacher or a nurse, Carmen suggested gently. Those are good careers for smart girls. But Elena had already made up her mind. She began researching military requirements, learning about physical fitness standards and educational prerequisites. She discovered that the Army offered programs for high school students and scholarships for college. For the first time, she saw a clear path from her current life to her ultimate goal. When Elena turned 12, Roberto gave her a gift that changed everything. It was a book about famous military snipers throughout history, including stories of women who had served as sharpshooters in various conflicts. Elena read about Lyudmila Pavlichenko, the Soviet sniper who was credited with 309 confirmed kills during World War II. She learned about Nancy Wake, who fought with the French resistance and was known for her deadly accuracy. Women can be just as good as men at this, Elena told her father excitedly, showing him pictures from the book. Maybe even better, because we're often underestimated. Miguel saw the fire in his daughter's eyes and realized that this wasn't just a childhood phase. Elena had found her calling, even if it was unlike anything he had imagined for her future. He decided to support her dreams, even if he didn't fully understand them. That summer, Roberto arranged for Elena to visit a proper shooting range in San Antonio. It was the first time she had been around other serious shooters, and she watched everything with eager attention. The range officer, a retired Marine named Jack Sullivan, noticed the young girl's intense interest. You want to try? He asked, gesturing toward the targets. Under Sullivan's supervision, Elena fired several rounds with different rifles. Each shot was better than the last, and by the end of the session, she was consistently hitting targets at distances that impressed the experienced shooters around her. Kid's got real talent, Sullivan told Roberto privately. If she keeps practicing and stays dedicated, she could go far in competitive shooting, maybe even military service. Elena overheard the comment and felt a surge of validation. For the first time, an expert had confirmed what she had always believed about herself. She wasn't just dreaming impossible dreams. She had genuine ability that could be developed into something extraordinary. On the drive back to Brownsville, Roberto talked seriously with Elena about what military service really meant. It's not just about shooting, he warned. There's discipline, physical training, following orders even when you don't agree with them. And if you become a sniper, you'll be putting yourself in extremely dangerous situations. Elena listened carefully, but her determination never wavered. I understand, she said. But this is what I'm supposed to do. I can feel it. When they arrived home, Elena immediately began planning her path to military service. She would need to maintain excellent grades, stay in perfect physical condition, and continue developing her shooting skills. It seemed overwhelming, but Elena had learned that big goals required breaking down into smaller, manageable steps. Her parents watched with a mixture of pride and worry as their daughter transformed from a focused child into a young person with an unshakable sense of purpose. Elena's dedication was inspiring, but it also set her apart from other kids in ways that sometimes concerned them. "She's growing up too fast," Carmen confided to Miguel one evening. "Other girls her age are thinking about dances and movies. Elena's planning military strategy." Miguel nodded, understanding his wife's concerns. But he had also seen the confidence and self-respect that Elena's goals had given her. In a neighborhood where many young people struggled to find direction, his daughter had discovered something worth working toward. As Elena entered her teenage years, her reputation as an exceptional young shooter began to spread. Roberto arranged for her to participate in junior shooting competitions, where she consistently placed in the top rankings despite having less expensive equipment than many competitors. During one competition in Houston, Elena met Sarah Chun, a college student who was training for the Olympic shooting team. Sarah was impressed by Elena's natural ability and offered to mentor her. "You have something special," Sarah told Elena after watching her compete. "But raw talent only gets you so far. If you're serious about this, you need to understand the mental game as much as the technical side." Sarah introduced Elena to meditation and visualization techniques used by elite athletes. She taught her how to manage stress, how to maintain focus under pressure, and how to bounce back from inevitable mistakes. These lessons proved invaluable as Elena faced increasingly challenging competitions. By her sophomore year of high school, Elena had won several state-level shooting competitions and caught the attention of military recruiters. An Army sergeant named David Kim visited her school to discuss opportunities for students interested in military careers. "Your scores are exceptional," Sergeant Kim told Elena during their meeting. "Have you considered the military's marksmanship programs?" Elena had been waiting for this conversation her entire life. She outlined her goals clearly and confidently, impressing Kim with her knowledge and preparation. He explained the various paths available to someone with her skills, including specialized sniper training programs. "The competition is intense," Kim warned. "And I have to be honest with you, there aren't many women in sniper roles. You'll face challenges that male recruits might not encounter." Elena had expected this reality. "I understand," she replied. Elena's 18th birthday arrived with the Texas sun beating down mercilessly on the Rodriguez family's small backyard. While most teenagers celebrated with parties and friends, Elena marked the occasion by signing her enlistment papers with the United States Army. Her parents stood beside her at the recruitment office, their faces showing a complex mixture of pride, worry, and amazement at how quickly their little girl had grown into a determined young woman. The bus ride to Fort Moore, Georgia, gave Elena her first taste of separation from everything familiar. She watched the Texas landscape disappear through smudged windows while dozens of other new recruits chattered nervously around her. Some seemed scared, others excited, but Elena felt a calm certainty that surprised even her. This moment had been years in the making, and now it was finally happening. Basic combat training hit Elena like a physical blow during the first week. The drill sergeants seemed to take special pleasure in challenging the few female recruits, and Elena quickly realized that her shooting skills wouldn't protect her from the brutal physical demands of military life. The daily runs left her gasping. The obstacle courses bruised her body in places she hadn't known existed, and the constant yelling from instructors pushed her mental endurance to its limits. "Rodriguez," Drill Sergeant Martinez barked during a particularly grueling morning exercise. "Think those little trophies you won back home mean anything here? This isn't a shooting gallery, soldier. This is the real army." Elena gritted her teeth and pushed through another set of push-ups, her arms screaming in protest. She had expected the physical challenges, but the psychological pressure was more intense than anything she had imagined. Every day brought new tests designed to break down individual identity and rebuild recruits as soldiers. The other trainees were a mix of backgrounds and personalities. Elena's bunk mate was Jessica Park, a 19-year-old from Seattle who had joined the Army to pay for medical school. Jessica struggled with the shooting portions of training, but excelled at the academic work that Elena sometimes found tedious. How do you make it look so easy? Jessica asked one evening as they cleaned their rifles after another day at the firing range. Elena had scored perfect marks while Jessica had barely qualified. It's not easy, Elena replied, showing Jessica how to properly align the sights. I've just been practicing longer. But you're better at memorizing all those field manuals than I am. Everyone has different strengths. This exchange marked the beginning of a friendship that would prove crucial during the difficult weeks ahead. Elena and Jessica began helping each other with their respective weaknesses, studying together, and pushing each other through the more challenging aspects of training. The first real test of Elena's shooting abilities came during week 6 of basic training. The entire company was participating in qualification exercises, and rumors had spread about Elena's reputation as a marksman. Some of the male recruits seemed eager to see if she could actually live up to the stories. "Heard you think you're some kind of sharpshooter," commented Private Thompson, a cocky 20-year-old from Alabama who had been making dismissive comments about female soldiers since day one. "Let's see what you can actually do when it matters." Elena ignored the challenge and focused on her breathing as she settled into position at the 300-meter line. The targets seemed impossibly small at that distance, especially with the Georgia wind creating unpredictable gusts across the range. She had trained for moments like this, but the pressure of performing in front of her peers added a new dimension to the challenge. The first shot felt perfect the moment she pulled the trigger. The bullet struck dead center, earning an approving nod from the range instructor. Elena's second and third shots were equally precise, and by the time she had fired her full course, it was clear that she had achieved something exceptional. "Perfect score," announced Sergeant Williams, checking Elena's target with obvious surprise. "I've been running this range for 8 years, and I've never seen a basic trainee shoot like that." The other recruits fell silent, and Elena could feel the mixture of respect and resentment that her performance had generated. Thompson, who had been bragging about his own shooting skills, had scored barely above the minimum qualification standard. After that demonstration, Elena's status within her training company changed dramatically. The drill sergeants began paying special attention to her development, and she was selected for additional marksmanship instruction that most recruits never received. Captain Roberts, the company commander, called her into his office during the final week of basic training. "Private Rodriguez," he began, reviewing a thick file that Elena assumed contained her training records. "Your shooting scores are among the highest I've ever seen from a basic trainee. Have you given any thought to specialized training after you complete your initial military education?" Elena had been hoping for this conversation since the day she enlisted. "Yes, sir. I'd like to pursue sniper training if I'm qualified." Captain Roberts nodded slowly. "Sniper school is extremely competitive. The selection process is designed to eliminate candidates, and the training is more difficult than anything you've experienced so far. Are you prepared for that level of challenge?" "I've been preparing my entire life, sir," Elena replied with quiet confidence. After basic training, Elena was assigned to advanced individual training at Fort Gordon, where she would learn her military occupation specialty. However, her exceptional marksmanship scores had earned her a slot in a preliminary screening program for special operations candidates. The screening took place over 3 intensive days that tested everything from physical fitness to psychological resilience. Elena found herself competing against soldiers who had been in the Army for years, many of whom had combat experience. She was one of only 2 women in the group of 30 candidates. The physical challenges were brutal. Candidates had to complete a 12-mile march carrying full equipment in under 3 hours, navigate complex obstacle courses while under simulated enemy fire, and maintain their shooting accuracy despite exhaustion and stress. Elena's years of preparation served her well, but she also discovered new limits to her endurance. During the psychological evaluations, trained assessors probed every aspect of Elena's personality and motivation. They asked about her family background, her reasons for joining the military, and her ability to handle the extreme isolation that sniper operations often required. "What happens if you're alone in enemy territory for weeks?" asked Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a psychologist who specialized in special operations selection. "No contact with your unit, limited supplies, constant danger. How do you handle that kind of stress?" Elena considered the question carefully. I think the key is having a clear purpose, she replied. If I know that my mission is important and that people are depending on me, I can handle almost any hardship. The most challenging part of the screening was the shooting evaluation under stress. Candidates had to engage targets at various distances while dealing with time pressure, noise, and simulated combat conditions. It was designed to test not just accuracy, but the ability to maintain precision when everything was chaotic. Elena excelled during this portion of the screening. While other candidates struggled with the pressure, she seemed to become calmer and more focused as the challenges intensified. Her final scores were so high that they attracted attention from instructors who normally remain neutral during evaluations. Outstanding performance, commented Master Sergeant Johnson, a veteran sniper instructor who had served multiple combat tours. You have natural abilities that can't be taught. But remember, natural talent is just the foundation. Real skill comes from years of disciplined training. When the screening results were announced, Elena was one of only 8 candidates selected to continue to the next phase of evaluation. More importantly, she was the only woman to advance, a fact that brought both pride and additional pressure. The advanced screening took place at a classified location and involved even more rigorous testing. Elena spent 2 weeks demonstrating her abilities in simulated combat scenarios, working with experienced snipers who evaluated every aspect of her performance. During one particularly challenging exercise, Elena was required to track and engage a series of targets while moving through difficult terrain. The scenario was designed to test her ability to maintain accuracy while dealing with physical stress and environmental obstacles. Elena approached the challenge methodically, using the techniques she had learned from years of practice and study. She moved carefully through the course, taking time to properly assess each target before engaging. Her patience and precision impressed the evaluators, but what really set her apart was her ability to adapt when unexpected complications arose. Halfway through the exercise, her primary rifle malfunctioned. Instead of panicking, Elena quickly transitioned to her backup weapon and continued the course without losing focus. This kind of calm problem-solving under pressure was exactly what the instructors were looking for in potential snipers. Exceptional adaptability, noted Sergeant First Class Davis in his evaluation report. Candidate Rodriguez demonstrated the mental resilience and tactical thinking that are essential for sniper operations. Recommend advancement to formal training. The final interview was conducted by a panel of senior officers and non-commissioned officers who had extensive experience in special operations. Elena faced questions about ethics, decision-making under pressure, and her willingness to accept the unique responsibilities that came with being a military sniper. As a sniper, you may find yourself in situations where you have to make life and death decisions with limited information, explained Colonel Morrison, the panel leader. Are you prepared to accept that level of responsibility? Elena met his gaze steadily. Yes, sir. I understand that being a sniper means accepting responsibility for every shot I take. I've thought about that burden, and I believe I can handle it. The panel spent several minutes reviewing Elena's file and discussing her responses. Finally, Colonel Morrison looked up with what might have been the hint of a smile. Congratulations, Private Rodriguez. You've been selected for the United States Army Sniper School. Report to Fort Benning next month to begin training. Be advised that this is where the real work begins. Everything you've done up to this point has just been preparation. Elena felt a surge of emotion that she carefully controlled. This was the moment she had been working toward since childhood, but she also understood that being selected was just the beginning. The actual training would determine whether she could transform her potential into professional competence. That evening, Elena called her parents from a payphone outside Fort Benning's sniper school. Felt like entering another world entirely. Elena arrived on a humid Monday morning in July, carrying everything she owned in a single duffel bag and a backpack containing her personal shooting equipment. The facility looked deceptively ordinary from the outside, but Elena knew that some of the military's most elite marksmen had trained within these walls. She was one of 24 students selected for the course, and, as expected, she was the only woman. The other students were experienced soldiers, Marines, and even a few Special Forces operators who had already proven themselves in combat. Elena felt the weight of their scrutiny as she checked in and received her room assignment. Her roommate was Staff Sergeant Marcus Williams, a Marine with 2 combat deployments who had volunteered for sniper training after being wounded by an improvised explosive device. Marcus was polite but distant during their first meeting, clearly uncertain about sharing quarters with a female soldier who looked young enough to be his little sister. "Don't expect any special treatment because you're a woman," he said bluntly as they unpacked their gear. "This course breaks people. Strong people. People who thought they were ready for anything." Elena nodded calmly. "I'm not looking for special treatment. I just want the same chance to succeed or fail based on my abilities." The first day of training began at 0500 hours with a physical fitness test that was more demanding than anything Elena had experienced in basic training. Students had to complete a timed run, an obstacle course, and a series of strength exercises while carrying full combat equipment. The pace was relentless, and 2 students were eliminated before lunch for failing to meet the minimum standards. Elena finished in the middle of the pack, which was exactly where she wanted to be. She had learned that standing out too early could attract unwanted attention from instructors who were looking for reasons to eliminate students. Better to demonstrate steady competence and save her best performances for when they really mattered. The academic portion of the course was more intensive than Elena had anticipated. Students learned advanced ballistics, weather reading, range estimation, and target identification. They studied military tactics, communication procedures, and the legal and ethical aspects of sniper operations. Elena excelled in these areas, her years of self-study paying dividends as she absorbed complex technical information. Master Sergeant Rebecca Torres, the school's senior instructor, noticed Elena's academic performance during the second week of training. Torres was a legendary figure in the sniper community, with multiple combat deployments and a reputation for producing exceptional graduates. "Rodriguez," Torres called after a particularly challenging ballistics exam. "Walk with me." They strolled across the training area as Torres reviewed Elena's test scores. "Your academics are solid. Better than solid, actually. You clearly understand the technical aspects of this job. But understanding and doing are 2 different things. How do you think you'll handle the pressure when lives depend on your calculations?" Elena had been thinking about this question since the day she enlisted. "I believe pressure reveals who we really are," she replied. "I've always performed better when the stakes are higher. I think it helps me focus." Torres nodded thoughtfully. "We'll see. The real testing starts next week when we move to field exercises. That's where we separate the technicians from the snipers." The field training phase began with basic stalking exercises that taught students how to move undetected through various terrain. Elena found herself crawling through dense underbrush, across open fields, and up rocky hillsides while instructors with powerful optics tried to spot her movement. The physical demands were exhausting. Students had to cover hundreds of meters while remaining completely invisible, often taking hours to move distances that could normally be walked in minutes. Elena's small size proved to be an advantage in these exercises, allowing her to find concealment in spaces that larger students couldn't use. During one particularly challenging stalk, Elena spent 4 hours crawling through a swampy area infested with insects and thorns. Her uniform was shredded, her face was covered with mud and insect bites, and her knees were bleeding from sharp rocks. But she reached her target position undetected and successfully engaged her assigned target. "Outstanding approach," commented Sergeant First Class Anderson, who had been observing through high-powered scopes. "I lost sight of you completely for the last 100 meters. That's graduate-level fieldcraft." The shooting portions of training pushed Elena's abilities to new limits. Students engaged targets at distances ranging from 300 to 1,200 meters under various environmental conditions. They shot in rain, wind, extreme heat, and near darkness. The standards for accuracy were unforgiving, with missed shots resulting in immediate failure. Elena's natural shooting abilities served her well, but she also discovered that sniper training required different skills than competitive shooting. Precision was still essential, but students also had to master rapid target engagement, shooting from unconventional positions, and maintaining accuracy while dealing with physical discomfort. During week 6 of the course, Elena faced her most challenging test yet. Students were required to complete a solo mission that involved infiltrating enemy territory, establishing a concealed firing position, and engaging multiple targets over a 2-day period. Elena was inserted into a dense forest area before dawn and had to navigate several miles of difficult terrain to reach her assigned sector. She carried everything she would need for 48 hours, including her rifle, ammunition, food, water, and camouflage equipment. The mission scenario required her to observe a simulated enemy compound and engage specific targets as they appeared. The targets were presented randomly over the course of the exercise, testing her ability to maintain alertness and readiness despite fatigue and environmental stress. Elena established her firing position in a cluster of fallen trees that provided excellent concealment and clear sight lines to the target area. She carefully arranged her equipment and settled in to wait for targets to appear. The first target presented itself after 6 hours of patient observation. Elena identified the figure through her scope, confirmed it matched her target description, and made the shot. The bullet struck exactly where she had aimed, and the target fell immediately. Over the next 36 hours, Elena engaged 7 additional targets while dealing with rain, temperature fluctuations, and the constant stress of remaining hidden in enemy territory. She maintained perfect accuracy throughout the exercise, but, more importantly, she demonstrated the mental resilience that instructors were looking for. Exceptional performance, Torres noted in Elena's evaluation report. Student Rodriguez showed outstanding patience, precision, and tactical awareness during extended field operations. She appears to thrive under the isolation and pressure that many students find challenging. As the course progressed, Elena's relationship with her fellow students evolved from polite tolerance to genuine respect. Her consistently high performance and professional attitude gradually won over even the most skeptical classmates. Marcus Williams, her roommate, became one of her strongest supporters after witnessing her dedication during the most difficult phases of training. "I'll admit it," he told her one evening as they cleaned their equipment after a particularly brutal exercise. "I didn't think you belonged here when we started. I was wrong. You're as good as anyone in this class." The final examination was a comprehensive test that combined all the skills students had learned throughout the course. Each student had to complete a complex mission involving infiltration, target identification, precision shooting, and extraction under realistic combat conditions. Elena's target was located in a mock village defended by instructors playing enemy forces. She had to approach undetected, establish a firing position, and engage her target while avoiding capture by roving patrols. She began the exercise before dawn, moving carefully through terrain that offered minimal concealment. Using every stalking technique she had learned, Elena made her way to within 800 meters of the target building and found a concealed position in an abandoned structure. The target was an instructor wearing civilian clothes who would appear briefly in a second-story window at random intervals throughout the day. Elena had to be ready to take the shot whenever the opportunity presented itself, but she also had to avoid detection by the patrol teams searching for her position. Elena waited for over 8 hours before her target appeared. When the moment came, she was ready. Her breathing was controlled, her position was stable, and her calculations were precise. The shot was perfect, striking the target center mass and immediately ending the exercise. "Outstanding work," radioed the exercise controller. "Clean shot, perfect tactical approach. Exercise complete." Elena felt a surge of satisfaction as she began breaking down her equipment. This shot represented the culmination of everything she had learned, not just during sniper school, but throughout her entire life. Every hour of practice, every competition, every moment of doubt had led to this successful engagement. The graduation ceremony took place on a Friday morning with family members and military officials in attendance. Elena's parents had driven from Texas to watch their daughter receive her sniper qualification, and their pride was evident as they watched her receive her graduation certificate and sniper badge. Elena's first combat assignment took her to the mountains of Afghanistan, where she joined Bravo Company of the 2nd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment. The unit was stationed at Forward Operating Base Lightning, a fortified compound carved into a valley surrounded by peaks that seemed to scrape the sky. The base was home to roughly 400 American and Allied soldiers, all tasked with maintaining security in one of the most dangerous regions of the country. The landscape was unlike anything Elena had experienced during training. Jagged mountains rose thousands of feet above the valley floor, creating a maze of ridges, canyons, and hidden passes that had sheltered guerrilla fighters for generations. The terrain was so rugged that vehicles could only travel along a few narrow roads, making every patrol a potential ambush site. Captain James Mitchell, Bravo Company's commanding officer, briefed Elena on the tactical situation during her first day at the base. Mitchell was a career infantry officer with 3 previous deployments, and his weathered face showed the stress of months spent fighting an elusive enemy in unforgiving terrain. The Taliban controls most of the high ground around here, Mitchell explained, pointing to a detailed topographical map that covered one wall of his office. They use the mountains as bases for attacks against our patrols and supply convoys. Our job is to disrupt their operations and protect the civilian population in the valley. Elena studied the map carefully, noting the elevation changes and potential firing positions that dominated the surrounding area. "What's the effective range for most engagements here?" she asked. Mitchell smiled grimly. "That's why we requested a sniper. Most firefights happen at distances between 400 and 800 meters. Our standard infantry weapons are effective at those ranges, but we need someone who can reach out further when necessary. Sometimes the best way to end a firefight is to eliminate the enemy's key personnel from a distance they can't respond to." Elena was assigned to First Squad, led by Staff Sergeant David Park, a Korean-American soldier from California who had been in Afghanistan for 6 months. Park's squad consisted of 8 soldiers, each with specific roles and responsibilities. Elena would function as the unit's designated marksman, providing precision fire support during combat operations. Her squad mates were initially skeptical about having a female sniper attached to their unit. Most had never worked with a woman in combat, and they wondered whether Elena would be able to handle the physical and emotional demands of mountain warfare. "No offense," said Corporal Mike Johnson, a machine gunner from Ohio, "but this isn't training anymore. When bullets start flying and people start dying, we need to know that everyone in the squad can handle their job." Elena understood their concerns and knew that she would need to prove herself through actions rather than words. "I appreciate your honesty," she replied. "All I ask is that you judge me by my performance, not your assumptions." Her first combat patrol came 3 days after arriving at the base. Intelligence reports indicated that Taliban fighters were using a mountain ridge to observe and plan attacks against supply convoys traveling through the valley below. Elena's squad was tasked with conducting a reconnaissance mission to locate enemy positions and, if possible, eliminate key targets. The patrol began at 0400 hours, with the squad moving out under cover of darkness. Elena carried her M24 sniper weapon system along with standard infantry equipment, a load that totaled over 60 pounds of gear. The mountain terrain was treacherous even in daylight, and navigating rocky paths in the dark required constant attention to avoid twisted ankles or dangerous falls. Elena quickly discovered that combat operations were far more physically demanding than anything she had experienced in training. The high altitude left her breathing hard during steep climbs, and the weight of her equipment made every step a challenge. However, her years of physical conditioning served her well, and she was able to keep pace with her squad mates without slowing the unit's progress. After 4 hours of difficult climbing, the squad reached a position that overlooked the suspected enemy area. Park deployed his soldiers in a defensive perimeter while Elena and her spotter, Specialist Tommy Chun, moved to a concealed observation post about 50 meters away. Elena and Chun spent the next 6 hours carefully scanning the opposite ridge through their scopes, looking for any signs of enemy activity. The work required intense concentration and patience, as potential targets might only be visible for seconds before disappearing behind rocks or vegetation. "Movement at 11 o'clock, Chen whispered, pointing toward a cluster of boulders about 900 meters away. "Looks like someone moving between the rocks." Elena adjusted her scope and focused on the area Chun had indicated. After several minutes of patient observation, she spotted a figure carrying what appeared to be an assault rifle. The individual was moving carefully from position to position, clearly conducting surveillance of the valley below. "I've got eyes on a military-age male with a weapon," Elena reported quietly into her radio. "Range approximately 900 meters. Target appears to be conducting reconnaissance of coalition supply routes." Park's voice came back immediately. "Are you confident in the identification and distance?" Elena spent another minute carefully studying the target through her scope. The individual was wearing traditional Afghan clothing, but was carrying military equipment and moving with tactical awareness that suggested combat training. Positive identification. Target is armed and appears to be conducting military reconnaissance. "I have a clear shot. Take the shot when ready," Park authorized. Elena settled into her firing position and began her pre-shot routine. She checked wind direction and speed, estimated the exact range to target, and calculated the necessary adjustments for the mountain environment. The shot would be challenging due to the distance and the thin air at high altitude, but it was well within her capabilities. Her breathing slowed and steadied as she placed her finger on the trigger. The crosshairs settled perfectly on the target's center mass. Elena exhaled slowly and squeezed the trigger with steady pressure. The rifle recoiled against her shoulder, and she immediately worked the bolt to chamber another round while keeping her eyes on the target area. Through her scope, she saw the individual fall and remain motionless. The shot had been perfect, striking exactly where she had aimed. "Target down," Elena reported. "Clean hit." Chen was already scanning the area for additional threats. No other movement visible. Looks like he was operating alone. The squad maintained their observation post for another 2 hours to ensure that Elena's shot hadn't attracted additional enemy forces. When it became clear that the area was secure, they began their movement back to base. During the return journey, Elena's squad mates treated her with noticeably more respect than they had shown before the mission. Her calm professionalism and accurate shooting had impressed soldiers who had initially doubted her capabilities. "That was a hell of a shot," Johnson commented as they navigated a particularly treacherous section of the trail. 900 meters in these mountains isn't easy for anyone. Park was equally impressed with Elena's performance. "Outstanding work today," he told her during the squad's debriefing. "You handled yourself like a seasoned combat veteran." Elena appreciated the praise, but she also understood that one successful engagement didn't make her a proven soldier. Combat operations would present many different challenges, and she would need to demonstrate consistency and reliability under various conditions. Over the following weeks, Elena participated in numerous patrols and combat operations. She engaged enemy targets at ranges from 400 to 1,200 meters, always with precision and professionalism. Her reputation as an accurate shooter spread throughout the company, and other squad leaders began requesting her support for particularly dangerous missions. During one memorable operation, Elena's squad was assigned to provide overwatch for a convoy moving through a narrow mountain pass known for frequent ambushes. Intelligence reports suggested that Taliban fighters had been positioning themselves along the route to attack vehicles with rocket-propelled grenades and small arms fire. Elena positioned herself on a ridge that provided excellent observation of the entire pass. From her elevated position, she could see potential ambush sites that wouldn't be visible to the convoy crews below. The convoy consisted of 12 vehicles carrying supplies and personnel to a remote outpost. As the lead vehicles entered the pass, Elena spotted movement among the rocks about 600 meters away from the road. "I've got possible enemy movement on the south side of the pass," she reported to the convoy commander. Multiple individuals moving into position near the road. Within moments, Elena's suspicions were confirmed as muzzle flashes erupted from the rocky positions. The convoy came under intense fire from at least 6 different locations, with bullets striking vehicles and forcing soldiers to take cover wherever they could find it. Elena immediately began engaging the ambush positions with rapid, accurate fire. Her first shot eliminated a fighter who was preparing to fire a rocket-propelled grenade at the lead vehicle. Her second and third shots silenced a machine gun position that had been raking the convoy with automatic fire. 3 targets down, Elena reported while scanning for additional threats. Continuing to engage. The firefight continued for nearly 20 minutes, with Elena providing crucial support by eliminating enemy fighters from positions that the convoy couldn't effectively engage. Her elevated position and long-range capabilities allowed her to neutralize threats before they could inflict serious casualties on the vehicles below. By the time the engagement ended, Elena had fired 12 rounds and scored 11 hits, an accuracy rate that amazed even experienced combat veterans. Her precise fire had been instrumental in allowing the convoy to fight through the ambush with minimal casualties. "That sniper support was incredible," radioed the convoy commander. "You probably saved a dozen lives today with that shooting." Elena's consistent performance in combat operations earned her recognition from higher command levels. Colonel Sarah Williams, the battalion commander, personally commended Elena for her professionalism and effectiveness during a ceremony at the forward operating base. Sergeant Rodriguez represents the best traditions of the United States Army, Colonel Williams announced to the assembled soldiers. Her skill, dedication, and courage have saved American lives and contributed significantly to our mission success. The mission to eliminate Abdul Rahman began on a moonless night in November when Elena and her squad inserted into the Kunar Province mountains via helicopter. Intelligence sources had pinpointed Rahman's location to a remote valley system where he was reportedly meeting with other Taliban commanders to finalize plans for a coordinated attack on coalition bases throughout the region. Elena's team consisted of 8 soldiers, including herself, Staff Sergeant Park, 2 forward observers, a communications specialist, and 3 riflemen who would provide security during the operation. They carried enough supplies for 5 days of independent operations, knowing that extraction might be delayed if enemy forces detected their presence. The helicopter insertion went smoothly, with the aircraft dropping the team at a landing zone approximately 6 miles from their target area. Elena immediately noticed how different this terrain was from their previous operating areas. The mountains here were higher and more rugged, with peaks reaching over 10,000 feet above sea level. Snow covered the highest elevations, and the air was thin enough to affect breathing and weapon performance. "This altitude is going to change everything," Elena told Chun, her spotter, as they began moving toward their objective. "Bullet trajectory, wind patterns, even our physical endurance will be different up here." The team moved carefully through the darkness, using night vision equipment to navigate treacherous mountain paths. Elena was amazed by the complete silence of their surroundings. Unlike the lower valleys where there were always sounds of wildlife or distant human activity, these high mountains seemed utterly lifeless and still. After 8 hours of difficult movement, the team reached their planned observation position on a ridge overlooking the target valley. Elena and Chen established their sniper hide in a cluster of large rocks that provided excellent concealment while offering clear sight lines to the valley below. Through her scope, Elena could see a small compound consisting of several stone buildings clustered around a central courtyard. Intelligence reports indicated that Rahman was meeting with his subordinates in the largest building, which sat at the far end of the compound. "Range to the main building?" Park asked quietly over the radio. Elena carefully calculated the distance using both her scope's range-finding capabilities and manual estimation techniques. 2,800 meters, she replied. Maybe slightly more. The distance was at the extreme edge of her weapon's effective range, but Elena had successfully engaged targets at similar distances during advanced training exercises. However, those shots had been taken under controlled conditions with perfect weather and no time pressure. "What are the environmental factors?" Park inquired. Elena spent several minutes studying the conditions through her scope and consulting her weather instruments. "Wind is variable, gusting between 8 and 15 miles per hour from the northwest. Temperature is approximately 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Barometric pressure is low due to the altitude. All of these factors would affect her shot in different ways. The wind would push the bullet laterally, requiring her to aim several feet to the right of her intended target. The cold temperature would slightly reduce the bullet's velocity, causing it to drop more than normal. The thin air would have the opposite effect, allowing the bullet to fly further than it would at sea level." The team settled in to wait for their target to appear. Elena and Chen took turns observing the compound while the other team members maintained security and monitored radio communications. The waiting was the most difficult part of sniper operations, requiring intense concentration for hours or even days while being ready to act instantly when the opportunity presented itself. During the second day of observation, Elena spotted movement in the compound that suggested their target might be present. Several vehicles had arrived during the night, and she could see armed guards positioned around the perimeter in patterns that indicated high-value personnel were meeting inside. Increased security activity, Elena reported. Multiple armed individuals, defensive positions established. Target may be present. Park consulted with higher command via encrypted radio communications. Continue observation. We need positive target identification before authorization to engage. Elena maintained her watch throughout the day, but Ramon did not appear in any location where she could positively identify him. The buildings were too far away for her to see faces clearly, and she couldn't risk taking a shot without being absolutely certain of her target's identity. On the third day, Elena's patience was rewarded when a tall figure emerged from the main building and walked into the central courtyard. Even at extreme distance, Elena recognized the distinctive beard and gait that intelligence photos had shown her. "I have positive identification of target Alpha," Elena whispered into her radio. "Individual matching Ramon's physical description is in the central courtyard. Range is 2,900 meters. The range was even greater than Elena had initially calculated, placing it beyond what most snipers would consider a makeable shot. At that distance, her bullet would take over 3 seconds to reach the target, and even tiny errors in calculation would result in a complete miss. "Confirm range and firing solution," Park requested. Elena spent 10 minutes carefully recalculating every factor that would affect her shot. The wind had increased and was now gusting up to 20 miles per hour. The target was moving slowly around the courtyard, making precise aim even more challenging. Range confirmed at 2,900 meters. Wind 20 miles per hour, variable direction. Target is mobile but moving slowly. "I have a firing solution, but this is an extremely difficult shot." Elena had never attempted a shot at this distance under actual combat conditions. The physics involved were at the very edge of what was possible with her weapon and ammunition. A successful hit would require perfect calculation, flawless execution, and more than a little luck. Park consulted again with higher command before responding. "You are authorized to engage when you have optimal conditions. Take your time and make the shot count." Elena settled into her final firing position and began the mental preparation that would allow her to attempt the impossible shot. She controlled her breathing, slowed her heart rate, and focused entirely on the complex calculations required for success. The target continued moving around the courtyard, occasionally stopping to speak with other individuals. Elena waited for the perfect moment when Ramon would pause in a position that offered the clearest shot. She also needed the wind to stabilize, even briefly, to give her the best possible chance of success. After 20 minutes of waiting, Elena saw her opportunity. Ramon stopped near the center of the courtyard and appeared to be giving instructions to several subordinates. He remained stationary for several seconds, providing Elena with the stable target she needed. The wind gauge showed a momentary decrease in velocity, dropping to a steady 12 miles per hour from a consistent direction. Elena quickly adjusted her aim point to compensate for all the environmental factors affecting her shot. Taking the shot, she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. Elena's breathing slowed to an almost meditative rhythm. Her finger rested lightly on the trigger as she fine-tuned her aim point. The crosshairs settled exactly where her calculations indicated the bullet needed to travel to intersect with the target's position. Time seemed to slow as Elena began her trigger squeeze. Years of training had taught her to follow through completely, maintaining her sight picture even after the shot broke. The rifle recoiled against her shoulder, and Elena immediately worked the bolt to chamber another round while keeping her eye glued to the scope. The bullet's flight time at that distance was over 3 seconds, an eternity in combat conditions. Elena watched through her scope as Ramon continued standing in the same position, unaware that death was racing toward him at nearly 3 times the speed of sound. When the bullet arrived, the impact was unmistakable. Ramon dropped immediately, his body falling motionless to the ground. Through her scope, Elena could see the chaos that erupted in the compound as guards rushed toward the fallen figure. Target down, Elena reported quietly. Confirmed hit. Chun, who had been observing through his own optics, let out a low whistle of amazement. Holy shit, that was the most incredible shot I've ever seen. 2,900 meters. That's not supposed to be possible. The compound below erupted into frantic activity as enemy fighters searched for the source of the shot. However, Elena's position was so distant that they had no hope of locating her hide site or returning effective fire. Park immediately called for extraction, knowing that enemy reinforcements would soon flood the area. Outstanding work, he told Elena as they began breaking down their equipment. That shot just changed this entire operation. The helicopter extraction went smoothly, with Elena's team reaching friendly territory without encountering enemy forces. During the flight back to base, Elena reflected on the shot that would likely define her entire military career. At 2,900 meters, Elena's shot was not only the longest successful sniper engagement of the Afghanistan conflict, but one of the longest confirmed kills in military history. More importantly, eliminating Rahman disrupted Taliban operations throughout the region and likely saved numerous American and coalition lives. The news of Elena's incredible shot spread quickly through military channels and eventually reached the highest levels of command. General Patricia Hayes, the theater commander, personally flew to Elena's base to congratulate her and present her with the Silver Star for gallantry in action. Sergeant Rodriguez, General Hayes said during the award ceremony, "Your exceptional marksmanship and courage under fire exemplify the finest traditions of the United States Army. This shot will be studied and remembered for generations to come." Elena appreciated the recognition, but she was most proud of the tactical impact her shot had achieved. Intelligence reports indicated that Rahman's death had caused significant disruption within Taliban command structures, leading to the cancellation of planned attacks and internal disputes about leadership succession. During her remaining months in Afghanistan, Elena continued to serve with distinction, participating in numerous combat operations and mentoring younger soldiers who aspired to sniper roles. Her reputation as an exceptional marksman spread throughout the theater, and she became something of a legend among both American and Allied forces. When Elena's deployment ended and she returned to the United States, she was amazed by the attention her story had generated. Military publications featured articles about her record-breaking shot, and she was invited to speak at military schools and conferences about precision shooting and tactical operations. However, Elena remained focused on her continued service and professional development. She attended advanced military schools, earned promotion to staff sergeant, and eventually became an instructor at the Army Sniper School where her own journey had begun years earlier. During a phone call with her parents shortly after returning from deployment, Elena reflected on how far she had traveled from her childhood in Brownsville. "Remember when you used to worry about me throwing rocks at cans in the backyard?" she asked her father with a laugh. Miguel's voice was filled with pride and amazement. "I knew you had good eyes, Mija, but I never imagined they would take you this far." Elena's impossible shot at 2,900 meters proved that dedication, skill, and unwavering determination could overcome any obstacle. The little girl who had dreamed of becoming a sniper had not only achieved her goal, but had redefined what was possible for military marksmen. Her story continued to inspire young soldiers, both male and female, who faced their own doubts and challenges. Elena Rodriguez had proven that with enough preparation and courage, even the impossible could become achievable. The shot that many said couldn't be made had not only succeeded but had changed military history and saved countless lives in the process. In quiet moments, Elena sometimes thought about that morning in the Afghan mountains when everything had come together perfectly. The years of practice, the rigorous training, the combat experience, and perhaps a touch of fate had combined to create one perfect moment. It was a moment that proved that sometimes the most unlikely person, in the most challenging circumstances, could achieve something truly extraordinary. However, Elena's most challenging test was yet to come. Intelligence reports indicated that a high-value Taliban commander named Abdul Rahman was planning a major attack against coalition forces in the region. Rahman was known for his tactical expertise and his ability to coordinate complex operations involving multiple enemy units. Elena's company was tasked with locating and eliminating Rahman before he could execute his planned attack. The mission would require tracking him through some of the most dangerous terrain in Afghanistan, and success would depend on precise intelligence gathering and expert marksmanship. "This is our highest priority target," Captain Mitchell explained during the mission briefing. "Rahman has been responsible for dozens of attacks against coalition forces, and we have credible intelligence that he's planning something major. We need to find him and take him down before he can act." The mission would push Elena's skills to their absolute limits, requiring her to operate in enemy territory for extended periods while maintaining the readiness to take an extremely difficult shot when the opportunity presented itself. Everything she had learned about patience, precision, and mental resilience would be tested in the mountains of Afghanistan. As Elena prepared her equipment for the most important mission of her career, she thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. The little girl from Brownsville who had dreamed of becoming a sniper was now a combat-tested soldier preparing to take on one of America's most dangerous enemies. But Elena knew that her greatest challenge was still ahead. The shot that would define her career and possibly change the course of military history was waiting somewhere in the Afghan mountains. Of the 24 students who had started the course, only 16 graduated. Elena finished third in the overall rankings, an achievement that impressed instructors and students alike. More importantly, she had earned the respect of her peers and proven that she belonged among the military's elite marksmen. "Congratulations, Sergeant Rodriguez," Torres said as she pinned the sniper badge on Elena's uniform. "You've earned the right to wear this badge through exceptional performance and dedication. But remember, graduation is just the beginning. Your real education starts when you join an operational unit." Elena understood exactly what Torres meant. Sniper school had taught her the technical skills and given her confidence in her abilities, but she hadn't yet faced the ultimate test of combat operations. Everything she had learned would need to be proven under actual battlefield conditions. After the ceremony, Elena spent a few precious days with her parents before reporting to her first operational assignment. They were amazed by the transformation they saw in their daughter. The determined young woman who had left Texas had returned as a confident professional soldier with capabilities they could barely comprehend. "We're so proud of you, Mija," her father said as they prepared to say goodbye at the airport. "But promise me you'll be careful out there. The world needs good people like you to come home safely." Elena promised to be as careful as her missions would allow. As her plane lifted off toward her new assignment, she reflected on how far she had come from throwing rocks at tin cans in her family's backyard. But she also knew that her greatest challenges lay ahead, in places where her skills would be tested under conditions that no training could perfectly simulate. Barracks. Her father's voice cracked with pride when she shared the news, while her mother alternated between congratulations and worried questions about the dangers she would face. "I'm proud of you, Mija," Miguel said. "But promise me you'll be careful. This old man needs his daughter to come home safely." Elena promised to be cautious while pursuing her goals. As she hung up the phone, she looked up at the Georgia sky and thought about the journey that had brought her to this point. The little girl who had thrown rocks at tin cans had become a soldier selected for elite training. But Elena also knew that the most difficult challenges lay ahead. Sniper school would test every aspect of her abilities, and the competition would be fiercer than anything she had experienced. She would be training alongside soldiers who had years of combat experience and had already proven themselves under fire. Still, as she walked back to the barracks, Elena felt ready for whatever came next. She had spent years preparing for this opportunity, and now it was time to discover just how far her dedication and natural abilities could take her. But I'm not asking for special treatment. I just want the chance to prove what I can do." Kim nodded approvingly. "That's exactly the attitude we look for. Keep your grades up, stay in excellent physical condition, and maintain your shooting practice. When you're ready to enlist, we'll be ready to talk seriously about your options." Walking home from that meeting, Elena felt as though her future was finally taking clear shape. The path ahead would be difficult, but it was no longer uncertain. She had the talent, the dedication, and now the support to pursue her dreams at the highest level. That evening, she shared the news with her family. Miguel and Carmen had gradually come to accept their daughter's unusual ambitions, and they could see how much this opportunity meant to her. "We're proud of you, Mija," Miguel said, putting his arm around Elena's shoulders. "Whatever happens, know that you've already accomplished more than we ever thought possible." Elena smiled, but her mind was already focused on the challenges ahead. She knew that real success would require years of additional training and sacrifice. But, for the first time, those challenges felt achievable rather than overwhelming. The girl who had started by throwing rocks at tin cans was well on her way to becoming something extraordinary.